texted me and said that she's on her way. Anybody have any calendar communications? No? All right. Someone like to move minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0 to 0. Is there any unfinished business? Always? Okay. No unfinished business? Then we'll go into new business. 2017-0005, pending litigation. This is a 2017 standing referral with a potential executive session. And I hereby move that the members of the Town Council Committee of the Whole, Town Manager John Burt, Police Chief Luis Fasaro, and Attorney Andrew Glass go into executive session pursuant to General Statute Section 1-200, parenthesis 6, parenthesis B, for the purpose of discussing strategy and negotiations related to pending litigation and/or pending claims concerning the Porter versus Groton lawsuit. So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor to go into executive session say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 8-0 to 0. We're going to stay. And Councilor Antipas has a motion to move.
Yes, I move that the town of Groton hereby provide its consent to the town's insured tried public risk to settle the action entitled Aisha Porter versus Richard Carlson et al. Docket number 3:16-CV01024, as recommended by defense counsel in that action. Which court is this pending, by the way? Federal court.
This is in the federal court district of Connecticut.
All right. And which court is
It was in front of Judge Vanessa Bryan.
that?
You so move?
Yeah, I said I move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So this is pending litigation that we've heard in executive session with the chief and the attorney, and we're motioning to what Councilor Antipas said. To settle. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 9-0 to 0. All right, next is 2017-0252, the USS Groton Sail update. I think we have Bud here. I'm sorry, we have Bill here. And we've asked you to come tonight because some of the counselors want to hear an update about the sail. Feel free to have a seat. Councilor Moravsik and myself are on the board, and I know that Councilor Watson, Moravsik were on the committee to place the sail, and just wanted to come up and get an update. I think we've decided on a place. Well, I know we've decided on a place to put it.
Who decided?
The Groton Sail Committee.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all right. I have plenty.
I know you have.
So,
Thank you.
I've got one. I have
Yeah,
one.
I was going to talk a little, just
Oh,
grab
okay.
one, just talk a little bit to the girl. Yeah, when I came today was to give you an update on where we stand on the site selection and site procurement and the other aspects of the foundation. As Bruce mentioned, three of you are on the board, so most of you are, or at least a good chunk of you are pretty well informed. But I'll start off by taking a look at the brochure that we have. On the back of the brochure, you can see where we have a vision for the site. The sail is, you can see the sail, it's marked, and then the rudder's in the back, and it's actually situated on the old road that accessed the bridge before the Gold Star Memorial Bridge was there. So this land actually was I think the town had the land. They gave it after the Gold Star Bridge went in. The land was turned over to private folks, Larry Chesler's company, and now we're in the process of buying it back again. So for this purpose, but that gives you a good idea of the sort of the aerial view of it. And it's going to be pretty nice. And one of the things that's really important about it, I think, is the fact that it's right on the river. It overlooks where the submarines come, actually fairly close to that's this side of the river when they go past that. So the sub-vets and people like that will be able to fire their cannon and do salutes and welcomes and things like that from that perspective. If you look at the inside cover, you just open it up and take a look inside. You have a view of what the monument is the artist's conception of what we're going to do. Where you see the three flags there, there's right now there's trees there. If you walk out on that land right now and you look down, you'll be looking at sort of a lot of just brush and things like that along with the trees. That'll all be cleared out, and some of that land is not land that we're buying, but the owner finds it to be in his advantage to have it cleared out and look nice too. That's beyond where our monument actually will be. So this gives you sort of a good overview of what we have in mind. Some of the background on site selection is the site selection committee. I'm told I wasn't on the foundation when site selection committee was actually active, but they looked at a number of different places, some of which didn't work out for various reasons. The neighbors didn't want it, or some other thing, and actually it turned out that it was sort of late in the study that this site that we're looking at now was selected, and or at least it was entertained to be selected, and people got enthusiastic about it because it was right on the water, which was a pretty good criteria for selection, and it was also halfway between the sub-base and EB, which were two big aspects of the Sail Foundation or the monument. So the board of directors had voted probably a year and a half ago to move ahead with the purchase of this land from Larry Chesler, who owns I think it's 2319 and 15 Thames Street. The land that we're looking at is at 15 Thames Street, and it's not the entire lot. It's about an acre of land that we're looking at there, and it's taken us longer than we wanted to actually close the deal, if you will, with Larry Chesler, because the land itself is there's a performance mortgage on lot 15. That is what we're talking about for the site. But the performance mortgage has everything to do with lot 21, which is further to the south. And in coming up with this kind of a weird situation where you have land that we want to buy that has no environmental issues is being impeded because there are environmental issues associated with lot 21, and the people that Larry Chesler actually got the land from put a performance mortgage against the good land so that he would be required to complete the environmental work on the land that had environmental issues, which was the lot 2021. And so that process has taken a while. He's had several different, he being Larry Chesler, has covered several different phases of this work, and he's finally in the final phase of it. He's worked a lot with environmental consultants of Catalyst Environment, and the person that he's been dealing with there is Mark Gottlieb. And Mark Gottlieb, being the consultant, has been working with the Connecticut DEP, Bill Warzeka, W-A-R-Z-E-C-H-A, Bill Warzeka. And so the report that we have is that the DEP has reviewed the plans for mitigation and are satisfied with them. And so that has, most of that work is done. And actually, I met with Larry yesterday, and he expects to have his environmental work finished up by actually the end of this month. He has, right now, he's moving, well, I'll just cover the status report briefly with you from him. Contract has been executed for completion of environmental remediation on 21 Thames Street. Work commenced Monday, November 13th. All pre-paving work is scheduled to be concluded by November 17th. Paving inside the old terminal dike area will commence upon completion of the funding package. Talk to you a little bit about that. Impacted soil has been excavated. Water samples have been taken. 19 Thames Street Partnership attorney has been authorized to request to draw a purchase and sale agreement pursuant to the letter of intent, which we have a letter of intent signed. And this step is necessary for financing package and is integral part of the mortgagee's approval. So he's the last phase of his work is he has scheduled for the end of this month, and that's putting a 4-inch paving on the lot 21 with 4 inches of whatever they call it, gravel or something underneath for a foundation. So it's a fairly thick amount of asphalt. It's about $30,000 is probably going to be around the cost. And what he'll be doing is going to Chelsea Groton to get money to fund that. He already has a letter of approval from a couple of years ago for quite a bit more than what he needs to finish the work. So he expects to go and get that financing, and that should pretty much finish the work. He would like to see a closing in December. My feeling is that we'd be very lucky if we could actually have a closing in December, because there's enough things out there that could delay things a little bit. But I think the big point that I would make at this juncture is that even though it's taken us more than a year to close the deal with Larry Chesler and Company, we're at a point now where it looks like we just about are at the end of the road. The couple of things that could hold us up still would be is the person that holds the performance mortgage on 15 Thames Street, the site, could throw some. It's pretty clear in the mortgage that they just have to do the environmental mitigation, but if because he has to clear it, I mean there could be some complications there, but we don't. Larry Chesler does not expect that to happen. And the other thing that could happen is there could be some DEP type issue. He doesn't need to have a DEP sign off on the work for the closing, but if something came along where they wanted to require that the DEP sign off, that could add a couple months to the closing. But that right now, the seller does not anticipate that being a problem. Some of the other things that are going on right now are I mentioned construction's in progress. And there's a signed letter of agreement between Larry Chesler's company and the foundation. Site drawings and estimates of site work have been prepared by Chad Frost, and we're looking to raise about $2 million, and we feel like we're coming along pretty well on that. The electric boat has agreed to prepare the sail, and so the sail will be moved from the sub-base down to electric boat at the appropriate time, and an electric boat has agreed to do the work that's needed to get the sail prepared to be mounted at the site. The foundation has to take care of actually moving it, and then with our fundraising process, we're in what we call the quiet phase. That's why you haven't heard too much from us. We're trying to get the larger donors to make contributions. We have a steering committee. The steering committee is headed up by Marion Galbraith, and they've been pretty active in sending out letters and getting getting commitments and donations. And one of the things is we already have enough money to buy the land outright. We probably will get a sort of a bridge loan or some kind of a loan that will only take money out as we need it, just so that we have we aren't constrained by funding after we pay off pay for the site. Let's see. The lawyers are working on our lawyer is working with Larry Chesler's lawyer right now on an agreement for the sale, and that's pretty much where we're at. So we're pretty far along on this. There's still a couple hiccups that could cause us some problems, but but the progress has been a lot better in the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 months than it had been the previous year. So a lot has happened. And of course, there is an incentive for Larry Chesler, the seller, to make everything happen, because he needs to clear these environmental impacts from the land that he has in order to get larger loans from the banks in order to develop the property more fully, and he intends to do that. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thanks, Bill, for the update. Anybody have any questions? Karen?
Yes, I have a number of questions and also some feelings on this matter. What I would like to know is, how did we get to, maybe this is not fair to ask you, but how did we get to the point where the decision has been made with absolutely no publicity, you know, no involvement by anybody in the community? And maybe that's because this was all being done by a small group. I was on the council years ago that made the decision to bring the sail to Groton. We were notified the ship was being decommissioned. Did we want the sail? And we said absolutely. Fast forward a couple of years, I thought the sail was going at the library in Groton, because for a long period of time, that's where everybody was talking about it. Then I didn't hear anything. I assumed something was being worked on. And then the next thing I know is there's a committee's been formed and it's going in this spot, and I've been down to look at it. And by your criteria for site selection, that site that you're putting it on, the accessibility was rated as poor. I can't figure out for the life of me how people are going to be able to go down there with cars and kids and civic groups and everything else. I mean, there's no place to park. It's very inaccessible. It may look great from the water, but it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of space on ground to get large number of people there.
There's an answer. In our letter of intent with the seller, Larry Chesler, the letter of intent has an agreement that the site will be able to use the parking lot. If you look at the back picture, you'll see there's a big parking lot right behind the right behind the Flasher Memorial and the Groton Memorial, to the right of the Groton Memorial, that white area in there. There's a large amount of parking there. So I don't think that'll be a problem. Plus, the Flasher, the Subvets and company have used the Flasher Memorial quite a bit, and they don't seem to have they use the same parking that I'm talking about. So they have not had a problem with parking.
Okay, I guess I'm very disappointed that the memorial is not being placed in Groton. The subbase is in Groton. It's in the town of Groton. And I'm just very disappointed that with a facility like we have at the library, where you've got a huge parking lot, the state was willing to lease us the land right there on 117. I can't think of a place that gets more traffic. I think it would have been a fabulous choice, and I'm very disappointed that that's not what was chosen.
I'm sorry to hear that. The decision was actually, the vote by the foundation was just about the same time that I came here. So the other sites had fairly much the decisions have been made before my time. As to, you know, why each site that had been suggested wasn't, you know, selected, and why they selected this one. The main reason they selected this site is because it is on the water and because it's halfway between EB and the subbase. If this site falls through for some reason, you know, some surprise on the DEP or something like that, well, then what we probably would do is look at the library as a site to be used for the memorial.
Harry?
Yeah, I was on the site selection committee, myself and Councilor Morosic, and you can chime in if I'm wrong. It was Barbara Goodrich, myself, Rich, Mark Offinger, and Rick Norris.
That's correct.
And we got 24 sites given to us. I think it was 24.
28.
28. And just sitting here, I can only come up with 8 off the top of my head. But I just say that we rode around, we looked at them all, and when we first came back to the executive committee, which I was on, our first choice was Groton Heights, the school. And I don't know where the other ones were, except there was one on Crystal Lake Road, the entrance into the sub-base was another spot. The overlook, where all those solar panels are on Route 12, was another spot. But this wasn't a spot, all right?
That's right.
It was not one of the spots recommended by the site committee. And for the life of me, I don't know how this happened, because all of a sudden I got taken off a CC list and I didn't get any more minutes for a while. And I basically read about this in the paper. And I think our next site was, the Costa property was another one.
That's right.
And there was, somebody had to try to deal with the owner or the person that owned the home. And I guess that didn't work out. I think Jim Streeter was working on that. And our next site was the library. And I just, this has gone on for a couple of years, and I've been taken out of the loop, and haven't got any of the minutes. This was not what the site committee, it wasn't even on our list.
Yeah, what I
So
was
I don't-
told, and you know, I wasn't there at the time, so I can't give you firsthand information, but I was told it's like the Groton Heights, for example, was given up on because there was a lot of pushback from the property owners.
There was an objection by the state for the,
Groton Heights.
for Groton Heights, and then from the library on the other side. We know that. That's why that one got discounted. And then we started working on the Costa property. And for that one to work, the house that was there, the man that lived in it, would have had to have sold us the house for that to work, because it wasn't big enough. And I think the library was the next choice.
Yes.
And there was objection by the captain that was in charge, his name was Ben, I don't remember his last name, to put it on Crystal Lake Road right at the entrance into the sub-base, because it would have been, the proposal was to put it right in the middle of the road.
Like I say,
But this wasn't even one of the sites that we considered.
Yeah, what I was told, and I asked the question, I talked to Marion Galbraith about it.
It's unfortunate that Marion couldn't make it tonight. Sounds like it would be a wealth of knowledge as well.
Yeah, Marion probably could have explained that, so I apologize that she's not here. But anyway, what she did, she mentioned to me is that after they had gone through site selection, then this site came up sort of after the work had been done, and it was thought to be, just ideal for what people wanted in terms of having it next to the water. And so that's part of the understanding I have.
Bonnie?
I'm not so sure this won't be a good site, but I'm outraged at the way this was handled. It basically got hijacked by Mayor Galbraith, and I was on the Sub-Century Committee with her, volunteering at the art festival 2 years ago. And one of the assistant PAOs from it wasn't a public announcement of where the site was. And he said, oh, it's going down underneath the bridge. I said, that decision hasn't been made. Oh, well, yes, it has. And I asked Marion at the festival if it had been made, and she said, oh, no, it hasn't been made yet. And first of all, this is a town project. It's being run by the foundation. After it was decided on this new site, why didn't they come to the town council?
Yeah, well, the foundation.
2 years later, they come to us, after the
I'm sorry, say
decision's
that
already
again,
been
please.
made.
I didn't quite hear you.
They should have come to us and asked if we were in agreement with it.
Okay, well, I'll just mention, we did have, Mark Ofinger, of course, is on the board, and, was tuned into this. Marion Galbraith, from the city was tuned into this. And so, you know, we did have, you know, people that, you know, were in the middle of things, are on the board, and they never raised any objections to this, and to the best of my knowledge, they voted for it.
I mean, I will say that, I mean, I'm on the board as well.
Yeah.
And I came into the board, I think after the decision was made. I understand why the decision was made. I understand also that people worked hard. You used the word hijack. I think that ultimately there's things, you know, people who work, get into committees and work hard on things, and their decisions go by the wayside. It's unfortunate. If you want, you use the word hijack, but I understand, Bill, that, you know, you weren't there for it, so it's not fair to sit here and have you try to defend something that really you didn't have a lot to do with. But I do think that, you know, even myself on the board, again, I think the drawings look great. I like the way it looks and everything, and I understand the parking situation. But you do see in how it all played out that, you know, it was a force-fed thing. And, you know, again, the board was on board because they voted for it, but it was a direction that was being driven, and hard to go back. I mean, I as you know, you and I spoke about it.
Yes.
And I raised some concerns about it and wanted a drop-dead date, and we couldn't get one, and we kept waiting for this property. What bothers me about it is that, again, I think it looks great. I'm on the board. I support it. I just don't like that we gave him the property for free, and he's selling it back to the town. And that was my issue. That,
Yeah.
you know, so and the way that it all went down with the negotiations has taken a long time, and have wasted a lot of time. And we had a marketing firm on board, and we had to help us fundraise, and we had to kind of put them off because we were spending money and we didn't really have a final plan. I think the final plan is great. Again, I support it. I think it's unfortunate. Hopefully we can learn in this town from these things that, you know, committees do work, and it's not appropriate to take them under the wing and direct them in a different way, because, you know, Harry and Rich, and there's other people on the committee who worked hard for it. But again, I understand your position. You weren't there, and it's hard for you to defend something. It's unfortunate that Marion's not here to explain some of the things.
Your concept of the drop dead date, though, was instrumental in actually making things work out a lot faster. When we talked to Larry Chesler about, you know, the fact that we're coming up with a drop dead date and we go to another site, things started happening pretty fast. And so we made you know, that was in August, I think you and I talked, or sometime in the summer. And since that point, we've made a lot of progress. So, you know, to the point where we have the lawyers actually working on it now.
And you said, have they tested the land yet? Have they done it? You said DEP is going to go and see if it waits, if it can hold the weight of
the DEP is actually worried about the other lot, the 21 Thames Street. The land that we're looking at, 15 Thames Street, doesn't have any known environmental issues associated with it, and so no specific action's been taken on environmental issues. The letter of agreement does have words in there about the fact that it's got to be clean and not have no environmental impacts that would affect the sale.
Great.
I have three questions. I mean, I do think it looks like an interesting rendition. I think it'll be nice, and synergy with the memorial that's already there. So I think that's a good thing. How much money do you anticipate having to raise to complete the project? Where are we at now, and what do you see the timeline being to finish construction?
The amount of money we've raised so far is over $200,000, and I don't have the exact amount because we spend it as, you know, money's been spent, and so I have to go back and add it all up again. But it's over $200,000, and we have over $100,000 in our bank account right now, and that's going to be enough to buy the property. And the timeline, what we're aiming, our goal is to raise $2 million. And so one of the things that the heavy lifting on the fundraising is also tied into buying the site. We've had some generous donations that have got us this far, but having the site actually bought is a requirement for a lot of other potential donors, because we have to be able to show that, this is what it's going to look like, this is where it is, and this is what you're investing in. And like I mentioned before, we're in the quiet phase of fundraising, where our goal is to raise about half of our money before we actually make a big public splash about what's going on. And when we make a public splash, if you will, we'll be trying to get the public to lots of small donations and things like that, and just a lot more publicity. But we wanted to keep it quiet until we get about half the money we need. And
do you have a timeline you're shooting for?
On the timeline we're shooting for, it's really dependent on the sale of the property. But what we'd like to do is have the monument done for the summer of 2019. In other words, we finish. Our goal is it's not that complicated to do. I mean, EB is going to have probably, I would say, just guessing, 3 or 4 months worth of work, and then the landscaping work would have to be done. We hope to be able to do that, start working on landscaping next summer. And I don't have a timeline. Actually, I don't have a little Gantt chart written up for it yet, because what I'm looking to do is once we get the property nailed down, then we do 2 things. One, we had Chad Frost is the landscape consultant, engineer, architect, and then he'll be setting up his timeline for the details of it. And then we also have to work with EB to figure out what the best time to get the sale over to them is. And that probably has, their biggest concern is to make sure that when they get done, the sale goes and doesn't stay in the yard. So they want to make sure that the site, will be prepared to take the sale when they get their work done.
Rich? All right, thanks.
Yeah, I'd just like to let the people know that back in November of 2014, myself and Councilor Watson wrote put the referral in to bring the sale in, and it was done unanimously by the council at that time. We set up a committee, a steering committee, and a site committee at that time, and we hired Harvest Management Consulting Group, and they got on board with us and gave us a number of pointers on how to go out for the donations and so forth. In the meantime, I put together a complete conceptual plan of what had to be done, what had to be done to the sale, to the planes, and to the upper rudder. And I made a number of sketches myself, and it was just conceptual, but it was to the point where it could be followed in a preliminary design and then finalized design. And at that time, Harvest said that in March of 2015, we should have the site selected. That was the deadline that they gave. We went out, we looked at 28 sites. Initially, there was maybe 15 or 16, but as time grew on, it came to the 28 sites. And a handful of us went around and looked at each one of the sites with a criteria as to measurements on whether it had utilities, it was curbside appeasement, whether it had a parking area, whether it had an area where we could build a small building for bathrooms and so forth. So there was a certain criteria used on this. And we looked at every one of the sites, and like Councilor Morton said, site number 9, which is a site that had been looked at or has been being looked at, was considered poor. Not because of the proximity to the water, but the fact that it was where it was on Bridge Street and Thames Street, where, I could picture a school bus coming down there with a bunch of kids, and the kids crawling all over the place, and it might not be the safest area for the children. And at the same time, the sub-vets, guys my age, and Joe Zipperari's age, we have to go to the bathroom. And there's no places there other than in the woods. And the chief would lock us up.
Yeah.
So I think, we would have a problem there. So, so as a result, we had the budget process, and some of us kind of got off of that site committee and steering committee because we weren't called. There was no more meetings. And although I stayed interested in the project, I wrote to a number of other areas, other towns. I forget the names. It was Columbus, Buffalo, to find out how they did it, what process they used, how much money it cost them, and so forth. I worked up an estimate. My estimate was roughly $700,000 for the bare bones minimum, and then I had to add another additional $400,000 or $500,000 if we built a building and a parking lot, and we had to purchase the land. And I presented this to you on April of 2016. And I basically said that, there are other areas out there that are much cheaper. Being an engineer, and I've worked 30 years, we try to do things reasonable and not as cheap as possible, but not to spend additional monies if we don't have to. And that was the criteria I used. And so the process went on, and then I guess in September, you requested me to come back on board as part on to be on the board of directors for the committee, and I willingly accepted, and you made me the project manager, and I said, sure, I'd be more than glad to coordinate the work and get things done, because I've done that in the past, and I think I could do a good job on that. And but I was never for the site. I never positively said, I really like that site. I'll do it if we have to do it there, but I think there are better sites in Groton that could be looked at. Sure, the library is shovel-ready, and it would cost us very minimal amount. We've got the parking lot, we've got bathrooms, and we've got a place where we can have a small celebration if we don't interfere with the ongoing schedules of the building of the senior center. And I thought that would be a good idea, but I couldn't get any support on that. And I think your comment to me at that time was, Mark, let's have a site committee meeting and meet again. And I have asked Mark, and I hope he's listening, I've asked Mark 1 or 2 times, let's call a site committee meeting.
Yeah,
He chose not to.
I think to some degree, what's happened there is the horses left the barn, at least at that point. We've already had a previous letter of intent to buy the property, which we updated in October with more detail. But we had signed a letter of intent probably 6 months before, probably back in late spring of last year. So,
But I don't think anywhere do you have a letter that says that site should be selected. It was just
no,
grown.
the only thing we have is just basically the vote of the board of directors to buy and use that site.
Sure.
So that was, and like I said, at the time it was unanimous.
Yeah.
So.
Dean?
Wherever it goes, I'm presuming most of us have seen the sale as it exists. Right. And you wouldn't put that anywhere the way it is. So it's going to need gussing up. It's going to be out wherever it is. It's going to be freshly painted, but I don't imagine that maintenance in the future is going to be just a question of going down to the hardware store and getting a pale red devil and slapping some paint on. What are the provisions for not just maintaining the site, but what are provisions for maintaining these 2 pieces of metal over the years?
Well, the foundation knows, we've actually discussed that for future maintenance, and the foundation doesn't intend to, rig in and close out when the monument's completed. What we'll do is we'll have a living foundation that the job will change from building the site to maintaining the site. And we actually have, there's been discussions of actually putting a bathroom there, and there's also discussions of having a water fountain and things like that, some of which won't go in probably right away, but which could be added later to make it even a better location.
Because I could just imagine this thing starts off great, again, wherever it goes, and we're all proud of it, and then over the years, it starts to require some work, and then, well, not this budget, and the organization that said they would be there couldn't get their act together, there is no money there, the town will have to step in to avoid.
Well, the
large
Flasher Monument's sort of a good example, though. They maintain that pretty well for, I guess it's just the sub-vets that do it. So, I mean, it's been maintained pretty well. I keep looking at it, and I say, my gosh, somebody just painted this thing again.
Oh, it can be done, but a
Yeah.
lot of times it's
But
not.
it's definitely a good point and one we've discussed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Bonnie.
So how far is this site from the nearest water taxi landing?
It's not too far. It's, what would you say, Rich? About maybe
Half a mile?
half, I was going to say that, yeah.
Good half mile, mile.
Yeah, the water taxi, I, for one, would have liked to have had is some way where you could get from the overlook all the way down to the water and have the water taxi
Right.
come out. But that'd probably be a job for another day because it's like 30 feet. It's pretty far down. And, you know, it'd be a whole nother effort to get a little pier out there and to get some way to move people down to the water taxi. But I agree with you, that's an excellent idea. And, you know, we really need to make that water taxi as viable as we can by, you know, having as many good sites on it as possible.
Well, that overlook site, they could have stopped at the Nautilus.
Greg?
Walked right up.
I get one last question, maybe. Is there any thought to flipping this around so it looks like the submarine's going to sea up down the river?
Well, the land, what you're looking at when you look at it, it's actually the old road. And so it's, the landscaping is such that it falls off very rapidly on either side. And so the only way to really run it is the way that they're showing here. The way the land falls off, it would be practically, it wouldn't be impossible, but
Right.
it'd be a huge digging job to try to make that work.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Dean?
One more thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I said, does it look kind of like a sub's run aground? But on the other hand, if you flipped it around, you never see the sub in a berth. I've never seen a sub in a berth with its nose with the bow pointed to the river. They're not berthed that way at the base, are they?
What?
Bow in.
Subs, they always bow in, aren't they?
Not always.
Yeah. So, to me, I had the same question, yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
I actually wrote on the Groton
Yes.
back in '93, but was still commissioned.
Jesus, where haven't you been?
Bill, thanks for coming in and answering our
Thank you, I
questions
appreciate
today.
it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your good questions. And
I thought you
if you, any other questions, feel free to ask us. And there's, like I said, there's several board members right here with you, so
Correct.
thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Can I, one more thing.
Bonnie, go ahead.
So I would like to make a recommendation to set up the site selection committee or to pick the library site.
Well-
But just, I know it seems like it's too late.
The board's already, the subs has sailed.
Yeah, there's a letter of intent. The lawyers are working on purchase agreements. Amount of money's been set aside. Unless there's some big fall through over the next couple of weeks, because the sale agreement, it has to be done by the end of this month. So the lawyers would have to come up with something pretty quick if it's going to stop. And then if we did run into something, then I think if we're going to go to a different site, then we need to entertain the idea of how do we select an alternate site. And I'm sure we'll go back to the same way we did it before.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Bill.
you very much.
Next is 2017-0255, filling the police support specialist position in the police department. Hi, Chief.
Evening, again. I don't think these were included in your package.
You and I can share.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Chief.
As you recall, back over the summer in July, the council approved, myself and HR Director Bob Zagami came in and with a proposal to repurpose an existing position within our records division. It was an Office Assistant 2 vacancy that was created when the previous Chief Secretary had retired, and a member of the existing clerical staff was elevated to that position, created a vacancy, and we proposed, after consulting with then Town Manager Mark Alfinger about creating a position that was more all-encompassing, that had additional responsibilities and duties, and that became the Police Support Specialist position. Unfortunately, shortly after the council approved that, a hiring freeze was implemented. Since that time, we have not filled it, we have not recruited for it, we haven't pushed the process along because of that freeze. And I'm here before you today to ask your consent in allowing us to move forward with the recruitment and eventually filling that position.
Diane?
Excuse me, the money's already in your budget, is that correct?
We have money in the budget under the old position because, as you also recall, that was
Right.
a salary survey was done and it changed the salaries of many of these. But we do have money in the budget for the previous office assistant position.
Dean?
Well, I make a motion, just for purposes of discussion, to approve alternative 1 in each of these, just so we have it on the table.
Second.
We have a motion in a second. Chief, do these need to be filled immediately? Like, is the need immediate?
I don't anticipate we'd be able to fill it immediately. We'd have to advertise, we'd have to recruit, so I'm anticipating sometime after the first of the year.
I'm wondering if we shouldn't wait for the incoming council, if we approve this, and then, they don't want to, set you on a journey to hire somebody that they may not want you to. Rich?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is it a possibility of getting a patrolman that has already been qualified and certified?
We're doing that now, and we're doing that now, and it's created some other problems. Unfortunately, when you ask the same person to do a couple of different jobs, then it creates some hardships. So the reason we push this forward is because there is a need. There's a lot of FOI requests. There's a lot of stuff that comes through our records division. I've got a sergeant that's doing double duty, doing this position as well as training and some other duties, and it's gotten to the point where we've done it probably too long, and we're getting to the point of diminishing returns with that supervisor because the person's been overtaxed. So I wouldn't come before you if I didn't think we should be filling it, as soon as we can.
I think because he expresses a need and the money is already in his budget, that we should let this go. We should vote for it.
Greg and then Bonnie?
I just had a question. What are the FOI requests in relationship to?
Reports, police documents, anything that we've got that's subject to the Freedom of Information Act, videos, body-worn camera videos, in-car videos. We get FOIA requests on a regular basis, and it has to be and it's not as easy as just here you go. Some information has to be redacted. We have to review the reports to make sure that we're in compliance with state and federal law as far as what can be released, what needs to be redacted. If certain reports that are requested we cannot release by law, other reports that are requested we have to redact certain information as far as whether people's records have been expunged or whether they're juveniles or other, it's kind of a complex process that can't just put somebody into that position and expect them to know what it is that they need to redact and they need to do. We need to send that person to training. And the other part of this is we're hoping there's longevity in that position, whereas if we rotate officers through, there's a lack of consistency and a lack of longevity, and it is an important skill that somebody needs to understand what they're doing and understand the laws that are applicable to FOIA and records retention.
And most of those are for pending legal cases, I assume, or?
Could be pending legal cases, could have been stuff that's already been adjudicated. Someone may want, years, some of the stuff that's come forward recently were events that happened years ago where a person wants to know what really happened, so they want to get the police reports because of an incident that happened many years ago, and we have to go through the same process.
Thanks.
Bonnie?
So the salary adjustment that was made, so the budget was a different amount. What's the difference in what will be needed for these positions? And where you're going to get that fund
Are you
from?
talking the difference from what the office assistants to what this position? It was sizable. I don't know the exact dollar figure, but we're also talking half a year as opposed to the full year, so.
So you have enough to cover?
We should be able to cover it.
Okay.
Anybody else? Chief, just is, so you'd like to get on, like to start getting on it now, right? You're looking for the okay so you can start the process?
That's correct. I'd like to start working with Mr. Zagami, because we would have to advertise, because it's not a sworn position, so it would be something that we'd advertise through the normal channels, and we'd also do an interview process, and there'd have to be some kind of background investigation, so all that stuff would have to be done before that person can come on board.
Okay. Any other questions? So, Dean, your motion was for both positions, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 9-0-0. 2017-0215, Police Department Mutual Aide Compact.
In front of you, you should have the Law Enforcement Council Mutual Aide Compact. Just for background on this, this is not something new. It's been in existence for many years with police departments that belong to the LEC, as we refer to it. And LEC is the Law Enforcement Council Incorporated. It's essentially the Chiefs Association for Eastern Connecticut. What that provides is some mutual aid assistance in the event that there's some type of planned or unplanned event that happens in the town of Groton or in another municipality. It's exercised quite regularly. We exercise it here in Groton every summer for the fireworks. Our officers, as well as other officers, go to the city to assist because of that event. So this is not a new document, but the existing document, which has been in place by all the partner agencies and municipalities, hadn't been refreshed or re-examined by council in many years. I want to say 15 or 20. So it became evident to the chiefs that this needed to be redone and updated, and that's what you have in front of you, which is actually done by our town attorney, Eileen Duggan, and her firm were the ones that drafted that for the LEC.
Rich?
Yeah, I understand that both the casinos are included in this now, which is a good thing because.
That's correct. The state statute was changed this year to allow both Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan Tribal Police Departments to enter into this agreement. Previously, they had not been able to do that because they were not considered municipalities. So in fact, the legislature updated the law allowing them to enter into these agreements. So, should there be an incident here in Groton where we need some resources that either one of them provides, we could do that. And conversely, if a critical incident happened at one of their facilities where they needed additional police officers, our officers could respond and would be covered under that agreement as well.
That's good.
Dean?
Was this moved? I don't remember it being moved.
No.
It was not
If it hasn't been moved, then I move to authorize the town manager to execute this agreement
Second.
on behalf of the town of Groton.
Great. Any comments, Dean?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read through the whole thing, but I remember asking a question like this on something like this before, which is the money question. With mutual aid, is there any thought to what it costs each town to host, lend, borrow?
There's no money that changes hands, so if we request assistance, then the providing agency foots the bill, and vice versa. So if, for instance, we asked under mutual aid for Ledyard or Stonington to come and support an event that we'd have, they would be paying for it for their officers, and vice versa. If they asked us for assistance, we would be paying for it.
Is that based on understanding that it would pretty much all come out the same in the wash?
I think so, and this is really for, I hate to say worst case scenarios, but I mean, if, God forbid there's a catastrophic event that happens somewhere where just officers are needed at a moment's notice, this could be invoked. They're covered by each of the municipalities, but also for those planned events. And in those planned events, like I said, done under mutual aid, we sometimes benefit from it, and sometimes we provide the benefit for it. So to use your phrase, it comes out in the wash, I guess you could say that. And some communities may benefit this year more than others, and next year maybe something else.
Any other discussion? Oh, Harry?
Yeah, the other bad guys don't know where the lines are between towns.
No, they don't. They don't.
No, there it is.
Does this include the canines too? I mean,
Yes, it does. We provide our canines to other municipalities. We have them bring in.
I think it's a great program, don't get me wrong. I just was curious about the canines. Thank you.
It does. It covers all of those resources. Dive is kind of a little bit different because of the affiliation we have with the Coast Guard, but canines, any specialty equipment we may have, or vice versa, or special skill sets that under an emergency basis can be invoked under this provision.
Dee?
Yeah, I see it now, waiver of reimbursement. In your experience, how often do our Groton cops, for example, loaned out to other municipalities under something like that?
On occasion, I think last year we did it, we provided the bulk of the department during the Sailfest, assisted Groton City, but also one event I can recall where Norwich asked for assistance. We provided a bicycle officer to go to Norwich for their fireworks. Occasionally we'll get them here into town for some of the events that we have, parades, stuff that goes on in Municipal.
Hundreds of man hours.
No, it was
Nothing like that.
it was a few shifts, with the exception of the stuff that's happened in Groton as a whole.
Yeah, the accounting for all that may actually swamp the reimbursement costs. I don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know of that as a matter of course. That usually the reimbursement hasn't happened in my knowledge, in my recent recollection, although there is the ability to do that. And usually that happens under a grant. In years past, some officers would be involved in regional spot checks, DUI spot checks, and there were grant monies that were dispersed from the hosting community that did utilize that provision that you're referencing.
Bonnie?
So, Chief, so you have that drug compact. Does this overlap that, or are they two
different
separate
things? They're somewhat mutually exclusive. This really is for planned events and for emergency situations. That is more of an agreement by the parties that are involved, meaning our detectives that are assigned, or Stoningtons or New Londons. They have generalized authority to conduct law enforcement duties in those municipalities. Unless this is invoked for some reason under mutual aid, that doesn't apply.
Okay.
Is that?
All right. Yeah. I wasn't sure if they conflicted or how they.
Two mutually exclusive agreements.
Great.
Is this just a standard thing? I mean, I know you said that our attorneys worked on it, but is it the other municipalities recognize it as just a standard, like a nip and a tuck on the document, and it's just a standard thing?
It is, and I will tell you that I believe most, if not all, municipal police departments in Connecticut have a similar agreement. Okay. Around the Hartford area, they have the Capital Region. They have a similar agreement. Fairfield County, Litchfield's, the Western Chiefs. Yeah. So each Chiefs Association has a similar document. And again, our document was a little stale. Okay. It hadn't been updated in many years.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the compact say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 9-0-0. John, the next one, 0246, we're going to go to, right? We're not going to go to 47 and 48, is that right?
We're not going to 46 and 47.
46,
Yeah, we'll jump to
47?
48.
Okay. So we're going to go to 48?
We're not doing them at all?
No. We're going to wait for the incoming council. Take care of that. So 2017-0248, authorization for animal control officer to charge certain fees.
In this particular, I can kind of generalize both of the next two topics in the sense that our fees and fines had, again, been a little bit stale. Let me make sure I'm referencing the right document here. As far as animal control goes, we were looking to increase several of our fines. We did an analysis over a year ago and forwarded these referrals in September of 2016 to consider higher fines and fees in particular areas. And for instance, under the animal control, we were looking to increase storage fees from $10 to $15, the quarantine fee from $5 to $10, and increase the surrender of animals to animal control from $15 to $50, and then to establish a fee to advertise in the papers of $25. What we did is we looked at our surrounding communities for these and some of the other fines that we levy as part of our duties, and found that ours were in some cases slightly, but in other cases considerably lower than surrounding communities. To keep them in line with the communities, we're looking to raise these. And I think you should have in your packet some of the information regarding this, at least I believe you do.
Any questions on, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, just a general principle I have with fines like this. I'm not saying not to adopt the changes, but I always have something in mind that I don't know that they're tremendous revenue generators on the one hand, and if they, what effect they have on behavior. I look at it from the point of view of a lot of people, very often for whom $50 is, you know, a bit of money. And I know some people go through life and they feel like they're being nickeled and dimed between this fee and that fine, and it's always all their fault, of course, but somehow there are people that really get it in the neck all the time. And so what I see is just a mere doubling of something, from $10 to $20. Doesn't really get us anything extra, doesn't change anybody's behavior, and just represents another $10 somebody's gonna have to come up with. So I always keep that in mind when it comes to fines and fees.
Harry? And then
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the animal control officer change certain fees. I do have one question though, Chief. Is anyone second the
Second.
motion? Thank you. If somebody's really, really hard up, is there a way that they can get their pooch back again? Or is it pay you don't get them, you know what I'm saying? There could be some people that are really in tough shape that...
Yeah, I think these fees are, you know, I believe there is the ability to waive it, although if I were told I'm told I'm wrong.
Okay, you've answered
that
my
wouldn't be
question.
surprised, but I
You've
believe
answered
that-
my question. I mean, if there's a real hardship or something, it would get resolved.
Yeah, I would defer to the judgment of our animal control officer. She does a pretty good job with that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've got a question about dogs. The fee and that's being collected, what if the dog doesn't have a license?
There's other fees that's set by the state.
Okay,
So these are fees that we have as a town, but there's others, the infractions schedule puts out fees that get updated annually, and some of those are included in there.
okay.
That's set by the state of Connecticut.
Would that officer notify that other organization about that person doesn't have a license for that dog, or?
Which,
In other words, they picked up a dog and it doesn't have a license, and the owner comes back and wants to bring the dog out of the dog pound.
different one, different fee. That's
Okay.
that's done on an infraction for the state of Connecticut. That's set by them. Am I answering your question?
Yeah.
You'd make them get licensed before they can pick them up.
That's right, they'll have to get a
Yeah.
license, yeah.
I think that's what
Greg?
I was trying to get at.
You probably, you may not know this answer, but any idea what we generate out of all these fees on a current year and what the delta would be with the increase?
It's a slight increase. I would agree with Councilor Antipas. We're not, you know, there's a cost to doing this type of work, you know, and this is kind of offsetting it, but not considerably. I would also tell you that there is a bit of a deterrent factor, maybe not so much with this stuff, but with other fees and fines that we're proposing. You know, we've learned through experience that some people, when they do certain activities and there's a nominal fee or fine attached to it, they're going to continue doing it. When there's more of a punitive effect to it, it may curb the behavior of some. When, you know, if they can say, I can do this and it's only going to cost me $10, it cost me $25, they may think twice about it.
Dean?
Just point of information, the budget lists that animal control fees is $4,000.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any
Thank you.
questions? We have a motion and a second for 2017-0248 authorization for animal control officer to charge certain fees. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? That passes 9-0. And then there's 2017-0249 authorization for police department to collect fingerprints and fees. What's that going from and to?
I'm trying to look at the documents right now. Excuse me, I brought a whole bunch of stuff with me tonight because I figured I'd be up here for a while, so I just gotta find the right page on it. Oh, thank you.
This is all brand new.
Yeah, We haven't been doing this yet. We're allowed, and in fact, other municipalities are able to do this, and you know, there is a ability to charge fees to collect fingerprints. We set times of the week where people can come in if they need to get fingerprints for pistol permits or for job applications. We pull an officer off the road, or we assign one of the individuals in our records division, one of the sworn people, to conduct this activity. We haven't been charging for it, which is uncommon among municipalities to not charge for it. So we're looking for the council to allow us to do that.
And how much are we going to charge?
I believe it was $15.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this fee to charge for fingerprinting.
Second.
Police Department.
We have a motion, any second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? That passes 9-0-0.
I stand corrected. It's non-residents $12 per card.
Gotcha.
Oh, geez, haven't known that.
Is that it, Chief? I think that's it for you, right?
It may be.
Are you you're not the aging grant,
You're not the
right?
aging grant?
No. I mean, I'm on a roll though. But yeah.
Yeah, that's,
2017-0251 National Council on Aging Grant. John?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is for the senior center through the parks to apply for a National Council on Aging grant. It's the amount of $800, so it's just to apply at this point for, again, a National Council on Aging grant for instructor training. What they do is there's a program called Fit and Strong. It's an evidence-based physical activity behavior change intervention that's been successfully implemented in multiple community-based settings. It's for older adults for helping with lower extremity joint pain, stiffness, that type of thing. So you get trained on a program that's been evidence-based, shown to make improvements in these things. They get trained, the idea that we can then provide that program. And again, this is just to apply at this point.
It's for the council.
Bonnie?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the town manager to allow the one-time grant application of $800 for the Parks Department for the senior center.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Dean?
No, I'm pointing to you.
Okay. Is there any, there's no matching, right? Is there? Okay. No discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention? That passes 8-0-0. Last thing is 2016-0149, review of town. That's not the last thing. But that's the next thing we're going to talk about. 2016-0149, review of town council appointment policy. John?
Sure. And I can tell you this has been going on for quite a while. Just they made a variety of updates to our appointments policy. Most of it went on before I got here, but little tweaks, nothing too major as far as I know. There was, however, a question. So Personnel Committee has recommended to approve it. There was a question under Appendix A as to whether 3 of the boards and commissions should be left on that list. Those in question were the Fair Rent Commission, the Neighborhood Revitalization Zone Committee.
It's okay, I got you, Harry.
Oh,
Yeah, but this is his bailiwick.
I've never seen Harry move so fast.
I realize, Harry, that this is you. And
Yeah.
you were here, so
Sorry.
John was giving an update, but feel free
That's
to.
fine, he was there.
I was mentioning the part on Appendix A, those 3 questions that we still had for that personnel had asked for whether they should be included or not. The Fair Rent Commission, the NRZ, the Neighborhood Revitalization Zone Committee, and the Personnel Appeals Board. The answer to the first 2 seem definitely yes, they are still needed. Our attorney's looking at that 3rd one. She's not so sure it's needed. So I'll have an answer before it would actually come for a resolution.
Yeah, but,
Go ahead,
they
Harry.
could always be added back.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
if there was a need for them, they could always be added back. As far as the policy goes, it's nice to be able to walk away and maybe have this done. I think the biggest issue was unaffiliates and how long they would have to wait. Looking at Karen and Deb are on the committee and Rich. Basically, it's changed, and Nikki probably knows more than anybody about these rules. Unaffiliates had to wait an unusual long time to be appointed. Now, what this says is the party chairpersons for both parties will be informed that an unaffiliate applied for the position, and that's it. Is that right, Nikki? It's just, you're just informing them, and they can take that where they want, you know. They could try to submit a name and instead of the person, but it takes that off. The other thing that's important is the attachments. There's 2 attachments, one of which is Appendix C, applications for boards and commissions. And I think the important thing to point out there is number 3, where it asks people that are applying for boards and commissions to list community organizations which are actively involved or hold membership. And that would alert the committee to is whether they maybe need to ask questions of whether somebody has a conflict of interest or not in joining that commission. And the reappointment questionnaire, I think what has been added here is recommendations from the chair of the actual commission. So there's a place there, and it talks about attendance and actually has some specific numbers that need to be filled in. And that's really helpful for the committee to consider somebody for reappointment, to know whether they're showing up to meetings and whether the chair, I mean, the committee can make what decision they want, but to get that information from the chair of the commission. And the last thing I'd like to point out is, and this goes along with the unaffiliates or whatever, if you look at the very first page, my opinion as far as these, the appointment policy and boards and commissions is under 4.2.1. I've highlighted in mine my feeling is the council has the obligation and to appoint the most qualified citizens to the positions. That statement, I think, is the most important statement in here. And the changes to the unaffiliate applications is in line with that, in my opinion. So,
Thank you, Harry.
yeah.
Any questions? Dean?
Yeah, it's always been and I cheer the party, but I've always had a problem with the requirement that if somebody happens to be registered with the party, they may have nothing to do with the party. But if they're registered with the party, then by virtue of that, their application goes to the town committees. They should have the option, I mean, I don't mind the town committees getting information, but to say, well, you're a Republican or you're a registered Democrat, and therefore you should go to the RTC, DTC and get their imprimatur first. I mean, I realize the council can appoint whomever they want, but to make people go through the parties when they actually have nothing to do with the party except for the fact that they check the box off when they register to vote, I've always had a problem with that. But if you let go of that on the flip side, I don't know how you control the process at all. If I'm a registered Republican, but I just don't feel like going through the RTC, I just want to come to the council and say I want to be appointed to XYZ board. I should be able to do that. My application shouldn't have to go through the RTC. That privilege is allowed only the unaffiliates at this point, right? The way that's laid out. So if I'm unaffiliated, I don't have to go through the committees. But if I'm affiliated, no matter what my relationship with the actual parties, I got to go through the parties.
Rich?
Yeah, I think you're right. If you want to put down that you're unaffiliated, and then you go through the process of an unaffiliated, then when it comes to the choosing the candidate, we'll look at the candidates from both parties and the unaffiliated and pick and put that person in the unaffiliated and pick the most qualified.
Yeah.
So
If I have my party chair hat on, oh, you're damn straight. I want everybody to go through my committee, right? Because the parties want control over who gets on the boards and commissions. But with my counselor hat on, I got to look at it from the point of view of the applicants. And the applicants, most applicants, just happen to have. It's not a U, an R, or a D after them.
we're lucky to get the candidates that we have.
See, what you're saying is this is all academic.
It's academic.
Just say that I think this is better than it was,
Yeah, I don't
And I would like to leave this council knowing that we made some progress and made the appointment policy better than it was. The next council can look at it and change it and do whatever they want.
Yeah. But I just bring that up as one last, I've always had a problem with that little provision. I don't have a solution for it.
I think, Harry, you did a good job on this with the committee, and I know you were very sincere in trying to get this thing pushed through, and
Well, Nikki was a big help.
yeah.
Nikki was a big help on this. I guess I'm going to go as far as to make a motion then, okay?
Okay.
You could do that.
I'm going to move that we accept the revived appointment policy with, can we add as part of that motion that, that we, what were the ones that, what was the one the town attorney was questioning, John?
Personnel appeals.
Okay, so, I mean, and that can come up with the next council, they'll talk about it, the town attorney's looking at it. But I'll also as part of that motion that the neighborhood revitalization zone and the fair rent commission get taken from the ABC list.
I think those two are needed. Those two are actually, we know that those two are needed. It's the, it's been understanded they are active. Is that right, Nikki? That they are active. Right. There are
Okay,
people
I was under the impression they were not, so I'll just move it without saying anything about them, and the next council can deal with whether they want to change ABCs or not then. Does that sound right, or is that not what you're,
That's fine with me.
okay. That's what I moved.
I'll second it.
We have
Okay.
a motion and a second to accept the town council appointment policy. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 9 to 0 to 0.
Thank God.
Last thing is 2017-0263 FYE 2018 budget discussion. And before we get started, I just want to do a short review. There's been a pretty contentious budget year, I think, that the council's been through, has been through a lot. In the scenario that was handed down to us at the beginning of the budget season, we were looking at an $18 million reduction in taxes, the highest reduction of any town in the state. And myself, along with the superintendent of schools, along with the Board of Ed Chair Kim Watson, John Burt, and Mayor Keith Hedrick from the city, went to visit Governor Malloy and talk to him about the cuts that were being made and how they affect our community. And I think that, along with help from our state legislators, from Heather Summers and the state legislators, got him to reduce the amount of money that they were going to hit us with. But we didn't know that, and so the council had, to go along with the budget process, had cut $5 million in revenue from the budget. That's how we started our budget along, was a $5 million reduction. And it was, we ended up not, cutting town operations, and we ended up cutting some money from the Board of Ed, and ended up being a tax increase, but the spending was down. So now we're faced with the end of the budget's been passed from the state level. From like I call Herculean effort from our state senator Summers, we have $1 million additional pilot money, and we have $5 million that we've been made whole with from the state.
I hate to interrupt, just want to make one
Yeah.
comment. We've had a little bit, there was some action today with,
Okay.
with the legislature on the budget that there was an issue over the renter's rebate that was covered by the state prior, and then it was left out of that budget, and then it was going to be shifted to us. Now there's an agreement that they're going to cut the checks, but we're going to get reduced for 50%
Okay.
of the cost. So 153,000 will get reduced there, and then I believe 125,000 reduced for circuit breaker. So
Okay.
we're talking about 4.7 million or so.
So there are some things that need to be done by the next council. I think the Board of Ed is looking for money back. They need to figure out what they're going to do there. And today, I believe that the state legislature passed a law that municipalities will have the opportunity to send supplemental tax bills in January to their taxpayers that will rebate them taxes. So the point of having this on the docket tonight was to have a discussion about the amount of revenue that we've received from the state having weathered the storm, so to speak, and just have a discussion about, before we go, what this $6 million, or just under $6 million windfall means. So I think we could start with Dean. I think you gave us something, Dean, so
I
you
did.
have some ideas.
Yeah. Okay. I was struck by a couple of things as we got up to this point. It's been kind of a roller coaster, as we all know. And I was struck by the cash flow analysis before we finally settled on a budget. To the state that indicated that, what was it, John? We would have enough money to probably make it to the end of May, sort of thing, but not
Right around there.
by spending everything we had. Right? By spending everything. Forget the bond ratings, forget everything else. And what we would do for an encore the following year, that would be in lieu of sending out supplemental tax bills, which I can't remember ever in my lifetime doing. So that was one. Two, I remember an article, I don't know where it was, covering Stonington's affairs. And it had a nice picture of Rob Simmons, first selectman, and it talked about what Stonington had in the bank. And I thought, well, we're never going to have that kind of a percentage, but Stonington suffered somewhat less, was going to suffer somewhat less. But even given the fact that they're less than half the size, that their budget is a little more than half, I think, our budget, they had far more money sitting in the bank. I presumed it was unassigned, but I'm not sure. Far more money sitting in the bank, a larger general fund balance than we did. Now, you know what our policy's been. It's crept up over the years. We have a policy of 7 3/4% of the budget. That's our rainy day fund. What is it? It stands at about $9.5 million, round numbers, maybe not quite, $9.5 million. We all remember Mark encouraging us to keep nudging that up, that we get props for maintaining and for moving in a positive direction, don't ever slide backwards, and the potential that we were going to slide backwards triggered a Moody's rating review. As far as I know, our rating wasn't taken away, but we're not out of the woods yet, right?
There's going to be a full review on December 7th that we're going to be participating in. And once you finish your presentation, I got some information from Cindy that we want to pass out that kind of ties in with what you're discussing.
So what I've given everybody is just a two-page, it looks longer because I've attached copies of our fiscal policies. Just a proposal. This is not anything nobody's seen before, that says, you know, maybe this is an opportunity. Maybe this is an opportunity. In a couple of years, this thing that they put together up at the state may very well come apart at the seams. And in a couple of years, we'll be facing again the possibility of, hey, Groton, that's a nice grant you got there. It'd be too bad if something happened to it. And again, we'll be doing a cash flow analysis saying maybe we'll get to the end of May kind of thing. Moody's will say, don't waste your money. Because if you look at the bond rating agencies, they look at what you have in the bank, but they also give you credit for your unlimited ability to raise taxes. In other words, you have no cap. So they consider that a good thing. So from the bond rating point of view, they would rather you hike taxes or send out a supplemental tax bill than take money from your bank account, which is unpalatable from our point of view. But in any event, so I'm thinking, how do we prepare for what could very well be another shock like this year? Make sure at least we have cash in the bank. And then also worry about what Moody's would do, or Fitch, or Standard & Poor's. So I'm proposing, and I didn't make up a number, I said let's go to 11% from the 7 3/4. Let's adopt a policy starting with fiscal year ending 2019. Let's put the money away so we have it. Now, John said, that's a great idea. Guess what? This isn't just something you'd like to have. This is something you ought to have. In fact, you should put away a higher percentage. Why?
Well, I think Moody's, from our indications, would like to see something probably closer to the standard, probably closer to 15%. But they want to see that boosted up quite a bit. Or else we very much face a downgrade in our credit rating.
So if we didn't go to 15%, basically double what we have, well, a little double, more, about double what we have. If we didn't double the percentage, go to 15%, we would, so if we just stood pat with 7 3/4, we wouldn't keep our rating, we'd have
I
to
think
go up.
I think it's a likelihood that that could happen.
Yeah.
Why would it happen now, John, when we've had it that way forever and
Because I think part of it is that they don't feel that Connecticut's out of the woods yet. There's a lot of unfunded liability. We're going to be in the same position in 2 years, and they want to see us be less reliant on the state, at least be able to weather the storm for a while longer.
So I was going to say, go ahead, Diane.
I was just going to ask, is it approximately 1 million per 1%? What is it per
1% fund
1%?
balance,
In other
would
words,
that equate to
if we
1
wanted to
million?
go from
700,000, I think.
to 10%, what kind of money are we talking?
Right now, the general fund budget's about 118 million. Our 7 3/4 would be like the 9.2. Can you talk into the microphone? Oh, sorry. Okay. The adopted 18 budget is the 118 million, which made the 7 3/4 was the 9.2. When I did net of operations, we're about at 9% now on audited numbers. So that puts us at about 10 million. So I have 13 million here. Dean's 11%, I think, would be 13 million from the 9.
Wow.
No, you had.
Wow.
897, yeah.
13.9.
That would increasing our fund balance to 13 million.
And,
That's the 11.3.
That's 11%. That's 11% of the 118 million, because it's always a percentage of your adopted expenditures.
and Cindy, do you have any other information you want to give us before we continue the conversation?
Okay, do you want me to hand these out?
Are you sure?
I did have some information that Dean had touched on about the Moody's and what happened back in October. And we were one of the 26 communities that they had placed under credit review for a potential credit downgrade. And they were basing that on the governor's executive order, which was not as bad as we had anticipated, but it was still a significant cut to revenue. And they were basing this on the towns that they put under credit review is because there was insufficient fund balance to be able to absorb that cut. And of course, Groton fell into that category. And as time went on, we thought that possibly once the state had adopted a budget that Moody's would accept that, they would look at what had happened and maybe this would not go forward. But we were just notified this week that they want to do a full-blown credit review, which is the same as we would have if we were selling bonds. Mm-hmm. They'll be sending us a list of questions. We'll have economic development, just the whole group of people will be involved in this. And Moody's, as John has indicated, they're concerned about the towns and cities' reliance on state revenue and the fact that the state really doesn't seem to be resolving its problems, and that the future of state revenue could be at stake. And our fund balance is considered low because compared to our peers. And you had mentioned about Moody's has seen that, the Connecticut, we do have the ability to have unlimited property taxes, but really how far can you really go with that? So the goal would be to try and increase your fund balance for anticipated future revenue losses.
Great.
We have the ability for unlimited property taxes?
That's how they phrase it in
Yes.
their literature.
There's no, let me rephrase, there's no cap in Connecticut on
Right.
How high
taxing.
we could raise taxes.
Right, if you wanted to continue to raise taxes, there is no cap.
Except for what people can afford, but.
Exactly, but there's no, like a state cap. And the only other thing I wanted to add was, and Dean had also mentioned it, that any change in our credit rating is going to directly impact. We had the huge school project out there. We still have the paving project out there. And that just means that your debt service is going to escalate because you won't get as good interest rate on those bonds.
Bonnie?
Cindy, what's your recommendation to what number we should put the fund balance at?
She's going to say all of it.
Wow. It's a huge number. Let me say the policy, when we created the policy, the fiscal policy, and we said, and we had moved, I believe it originally was at 7.5. I'm not quite sure what, but we moved it up to the 7.25, and there was a time, we tried to get it to 8% at that time. But in the past few years, we've looked at that as a minimum, and we've taken everything out of fund balance. We've just said, okay, that's our bare minimum. And I don't really think that's was the intent of the policy. That was you were never to go below it, but not that we would use everything except that 7.75. If we could get the 11% to start, I agree with John. Our peers are at 15%. I had looked at a couple of.
Wait, what's Donington at?
I thought they were like, didn't the article say 20%?
20,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a little over 20.
Yeah, I think Norwich is at 14.
Norwich is at 14? Wow.
Deb?
That makes us look bad.
Okay, so here's, I'm just doing general math in my head. So you're saying we're at 9.2 million, roughly, currently.
Based on
which
the,
equals
yeah,
the 7.75.
that's the 7.75 is the 9.2.
And John, after taking the renters, whatever,
Deduction.
you're about 4.7
6 plus $1
million.
million for the pilot, if you want to count that into it.
I wasn't counting that yet because I'm just talking about the original 5. The difference between what you're saying about $13 million is $3.8 million, roughly,
Yes.
out of the 475 that we could. That still leaves almost $1 million that we kind of could choose, if we wanted to. So we definitely have enough coming in to where we could make the 11%.
Other than
Full.
keep in mind about, that the school will have a request, and with it becoming an alliance district, we're not quite clear of how much money will need to go back towards the schools, if any. So I don't feel comfortable saying $1 million for sure left on that. So I think we have to.
That's
hear
kind of why I
from-
wasn't really touching the pilot money per se in my own brain. I was just talking about the original 5 million make us whole again. Just without even talking about the pilot. Because, we could technically, could we use the pilot to go into our fund balance?
Of course, yeah.
So for me, it's 6 half dozen, one or the other, but I wasn't even, so that leaves us, $1.9 million to, if we had to give anything back to the Board of Education. This is where my mind was going.
And then just keep in mind, we will have to do something on contingency too for this year.
Greg?
250,000 probably.
I think we should try to maximize the fund balance, because I look at it as giving back to the Board of Ed, because we're investing in our, potential
Which I was
2020
about to say,
plan
but
by.
Bruce wouldn't let me finish. I wasn't done yet.
Sorry.
So I think we're investing in the 2020 plan by not putting that in jeopardy if our bond rating gets whacked. So I think everybody thinks that's an important part of the school building program, and I don't think we want to put that in jeopardy for the sake of trying to give back some smaller amount of money, so.
Deb?
Well, that was going to be my closing argument. You just took my closing argument away. But yeah, so for me, one of the major accomplishments in the last year was to get the 2020 approved through the voters. It's what our town wants and has voted for. And, this just seems like it's just a good thing to do overall, to continue to keep the town in its position, with Moody's and the bond ratings. And, as we continue to move forward with the 2020, plan, it just sounds like the smartest decision to make at this particular point. We, in the past, have chosen to take the money and give it back to the taxpayers. But when you take that and you divide that among everybody, is $40 or $50 or even $100 going to make that much major of an impact? I really think overall, even though the intent would be great, let's give it back. I just think this sets Groton up for more successful things moving forward by making the smart choice to put it in the right places now.
Rich, did you want to say something?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, we debated about the 7.75%, and it was all we could do was to raise it from 7.5 to that number there. And for us to talk about 13% or 11% right now, I think because we got a windfall, it sounds like we got a lot of money. But I think we really have to wait until they make a decision after the December review with Moody.
Right.
Yeah. And then with the new council, let them look at it with the new budget, rather than for us to make some kind of a judgment right now. Sure, it would be nice to put money into it to lower the bond rate, but there's other things that have to come out. We don't know how much the Board of Education is going to ask for. And then I'm not for taking the pilot money and then putting this into it. The pilot money was given to us because of taxes in lieu of payment. And there's a number of fire districts that count on that money. So to take that money away from them, I think would hurt them in the long run.
Greg?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't the credit review potentially result in a downgrade right away by, putting the money in the fund balance and having them do the review with that money there and having a better credit rating at the end of the review?
I think the more we can do with the fund balance, the better. And just to point out, a lack of action, that money would just go into the fund balance anyhow.
Right.
Harry, do you want to say something?
Well, I can remember when Jane Dauphiné was mayor back in the late 90s, and that's when we came up with the policy in the first place, and it was 5%.
In my advice to the incoming council is that we have a goal of 15%. We have a minimum amount, whatever that is, and we keep trying to build that up and keep changing the minimum amount, but then have a goal of 15%. I think that's where we need to be heading.
Harry?
Yeah, no, I think it should be higher than it is. I remember how much we struggled to go from 7.5 to 7.75. That was a big deal. There's actually people talking about lowering it at that time.
That was a
too,
struggle
so,
a couple of years ago.
I think it scares me. Our bond rating is such an important thing. I've been on, when Moody's and Fitch and Standard & Poor's have come to town and sat with, not with Cindy, your predecessor, but I've been through that. People don't realize how important that is. I'll just leave it at that.
Cindy?
I'd just like to add too, when we have the Moody's review, if we would be able to, that money is going to flow into fund balance or a portion of it, we'd be able to say that to them, and it would be feather in our cap.
Greg?
Just to do the due diligence for the opposite side of the discussion, I think, what is it, like 3.4 million is 1 mil?
About 3.6.
3.6, so what is the math in the reduction in mill rate to which you could say, an average house assessed at $250,000 would get this amount back in a tax rebate?
How much would you be talking?
Say it was 1 mil.
Whatever, yeah.
I would start with that.
Well, 1 mil.
How many tax bills go out?
We send out about $44,000 tax bill. About $43,000 is what was mailed in July.
That's more than residents we have.
Well, they have
Oh,
There's
more
car-
multiple
Cars.
owners. I got it. Okay.
I had just put together a scenario that was equivalent to a $500,000.
Okay.
And a home assessed at $100,000 would save $55. A $300,000 home assessed for $165.
Okay.
That's a $500,000, so just double it for a
So
million.
I just, I think the irony here is funny. That we overtax the taxpayers, because we had to put $5 million cut in revenue. We were taken to task by it, by our opponents, which is fine, saying that we raised taxes on, the mill rate went up. I don't know what they said it was, but whatever it was. And, this council protected the town, really. And if the taxpayers are looking at the mill rate and how much it went up and how it's going to affect the council and how it's going to affect their vote, then I think we have an obligation to recognize that they were overtaxed and they need to get their money back. And $55 on $100,000, and if we did a full mill, it would be $110 on 100,000, give or take, just doubling it. But there's people who could use that money right now, and leave it to the incoming council to deal with the revenue moving forward. I mean, I think that should be on the table. Bonnie?
I totally disagree. If we give that money back and our bond rating goes down, the taxes that are going to go up because the school bill goes forward will be way more than that refund.
So you're saying if there wasn't a bond rating coming up, you'd be all for it?
I'd be considering it.
Okay. Dean?
We're going into the meeting. We need to have this in place. It's just that simple. If we don't have it in place, are we in jeopardy? Do we fall from AA2 to...
We haven't fallen before.
No, but I mean, if we, so we haven't fallen before, but suppose we go into this thing and we don't have a policy yet, they're not going to be interested in incoming, outgoing, anything like that. They're going to want to know what's the town's policy. If the town hasn't adopted a policy, do we face a possible downgrade, which is going to cost a tremendous amount of money, especially with what we're going to have to borrow for Groton 2020.
And the paving.
Greg?
Well, like we said, the money goes to fund balance no matter what, without anything happening. Does the policy make a difference?
I think it helps if there was an
Right.
affirmative vote that you'd like to see that, that
Right.
the intent is to put the money
Right.
into it.
Karen?
I think this is probably one of the single most important things that needs to be done. We're in a situation now that we've never been in before. I think we've got Moody's looking at our bond rating. I think the handwriting's on the wall. The fact that we're having this full-blown review indicates that they're concerned. Nothing at the state level is going to change. It's only going to get worse. And I think the single most important thing that we can do to protect the town is to put it in a position to be able to weather whatever's coming down the road next budget year. And I think we have the opportunity. We planned for a cut. The cut didn't materialize. Now we've got this additional funds, and I think the responsible thing to do on a fiduciary basis is to beef up our fund balance. So I totally support going with at least 11% minimum. I'd like to go higher, but we can't go more than we have available right now, so.
Dean?
When this has come up in the past, we've dealt with things that could happen, hypotheticals. Well, we want to be able to weather a shock of some sort. Well, we've already been through this, and we came out okay for now. The ball's still up in the air. But it's no longer a hypothetical. It's no longer an academic matter. I'll put money on the state's we're going to be here, someone's going to be here in a couple of years facing the exact same thing. I see this as an imperative. I see this as an imperative. I really was very jealous of Stonington when I saw that article in the paper. It's just not even, it's not even a fraction. I actually have more dollars. I do not want to be in a position where we have to run out of money. People didn't believe it when I told them that. They don't comprehend that. I said, we're going to run out of cash the way things are going. How can that happen? It's going to happen. There's only so much cash. We don't get to print it. That's all there is to it. The checks will bounce. People don't get that. It's a reality. Don't put ourselves there. I don't want to put ourselves in trouble with the bonding agencies. There's so much bonding that we need to give them back the $55 or even $100. I know they can use it now, but what a deal. Here's $100. By the way, I'm going to rook you years down the road.
Okay. Diane?
Before I came in tonight, I must say that I was to the agreement with Bruce that I thought the taxpayers should get the money back, because nobody feels good about what we had to do this year. But listening to you, John and Cindy, I think the right thing to do is to put it in the general fund, because like Dean said, that by giving $100 to $300 back to the taxpayers might cost us a lot more in a couple of years to come. And I think that's the smartest thing to do.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the town shoot for a fund balance of 15% as a target.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I didn't hear him.
He said 15%.
He's recommending that we have a fund balance of 15%.
No, target.
Target.
Oh, a target, okay.
Can, how is the current, I
get
don't
sent.
see it in here. Where is it written? Oh, right here, on the last page, sorry. I was trying to find it. So the way it's written right now, I just want to make sure, I can understand we want a goal, but the way it's actually written in our policy, an unassigned general fund reserve maintained in an amount equal to at least 7 3/4% of annual general fund expenditures. So I just want to make sure, Greg, was your intent to actually modify the policy?
That's what I was going to say.
Like if we're going to modify it, it should be modified to something that
Right.
isn't
'Cause-
cheap.
Right.
We can't set the goal. They have to, the new council has to set the goal. Our option tonight is to modify the actual policy to state that we want a minimum of, say, 11%. Am I right? I just want to make sure that we are all on the right page.
I mean, you can always add a goal in there too, but the important part's that.
Right, but
Yeah.
this,
11%.
that's where,
Right.
So if we were going to, Dean, yours was 11, what was it, 11 point?
Mine was just 11%.
Okay, so 11%. And that was, that would need, how much revenue would have to stay in there to maintain that? What was the?
13
million.
13.
around 13.
It depends
So
on
we
your
would need
budget.
3.8, is that what it was, Cindy? We
roughly.
need 3.8.
3.8 out of the money that we roughly.
If I might, here's the perverse thing, as we've rolled back the budget a couple of years, the percentage stays the
Right,
same,
right.
but the dollars go down, which is fine as far as the bond rating agencies are concerned. But the amount of actual dollars in the bank that we've put aside, to put us in a position where we run out of cash at the end of May, in case something happens
Yeah.
again like this year.
So we have a motion and a second. Do you want to comment about that, Greg, or do you want to keep
I
it
just
there?
want to make sure I
It sounds
understand
like
what
we
your
want
intent
to.
is.
Yeah, my intent was to have the target, but in order to shoot for something in writing where we meet or exceed,
Yeah.
I do agree, we probably want to go with something lower than.
So would you withdraw that motion?
I'll withdraw that
Will you
motion.
withdraw the second?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, could have amended it as well.
I'll make a motion.
Sorry, I'm not mayor.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that the unassigned general fund reserve is maintained in an amount equal to at least 11% of the annual general fund expenditures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion, Rich?
Yeah, that changes the policy. I think the new council should set the policy. I think what we should do at this time is to say that a policy should be changed to a percentage above the 7.75, but not put any criteria number on it, because we have to wait until things happen.
You guys can think
And
it.
by putting 11%, you're forcing an issue. And it took a lot to get to 7.5 from the 5%. I think we ought to just leave the new council determine that percentage. I'm for changing it, but I'm not for
Nikki?
putting a percent.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify what the motion was. It was to change the policy to a certain percentage?
To change it to
Yes.
11%.
The minimum to
An amount equal
11%.
to at least 11% of annual general fund expenditures.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hold on. Harry?
Yeah, so I need to know real numbers. if we were to change the policy from 775 to 11, and I'm looking at, you're saying our windfall is somewhat under 6 million, is that right? A tad under the 6 million, is that right? What is the actual number between?
4.7, he said.
4.7, because we have.
Plus the million
And then we have to give money back to the Board of Education.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think it's the right thing to do, but we worked very hard to cut the budget a certain amount, and I agreed with some of the stuff we didn't, and, I don't think I'm comfortable with us changing, with the new council coming in. I think I just as soon recommend it, and some of them are sitting out here, they can hear us. Because there's some other issues that need to be resolved, like the NBR, whether our education system is going to get more money. I'm happy with making a recommendation, but
Yeah, just a recommendation.
I agree with Council Marazzi.
Diane?
We don't know whether we necessarily have to give anything back to the BOE. He came in 2 weeks ago and explained to us that he's saving 1.8 million a year by having that school closed. So that's a subject for a later date. What I would like to do is not change the actual wording in this. That's up to the incoming council coming in. I would like just to make the decision on what we're gonna do with the money now.
That's why I had my hand raised. I was going to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
I'll withdraw it. I don't know who seconded it.
I did.
And I will
withdraw
make
your second?
another motion.
Hold on, just don't do it so quickly. Cindy, do you want to say something?
I just wanted to add something about the Board of Ed and the Alliance District. I was quite surprised that we were designated an Alliance District this year. And I tried to reach out to the state to find out what exactly that means, because it's a 5-year, it's my understanding it's a 5-year designation, and what the MBR is. I was referred to one person by CCM who I contacted, who has now referred me to someone else, and I have not heard from her. I'm going to reach out and ask, because it is unclear about the MBR, because it's my understanding that that's why we were held harmless with the ECS. It's because we are now an Alliance District. So you get the same amount you got in the prior year. And the difference between 2012 and 2017 is the amount that would go directly to the Board of Ed, would not become part of the general fund. So that MBR issue, and whether the amount, if any, has to be returned to the Board of Ed for the 18 budget is unknown at this time. When I posed the question, they said, well, that's a really good question. Because I didn't know, since we were not an Alliance District for fiscal 17, does it start with that budget, or does it start with the 18 budget? That's the question we need to have answered.
No, I have a question for Cindy. So if the, let's say the MBR, we still have to go with that. Since the Board of Ed saved 1.8 million by closing that school, wouldn't that come right off of the MBRs of the previous year?
That's the part I don't know. Okay. To determine what the MBR, and even if I went out to the state, and their website they don't even have the 16, 17 MBR out there that should have been updated in May of 17. But it just seems to be a very difficult number for the state to be able to tell you. And I wanted to see the calculation for the Alliance District to make sure that they're using proper information.
John?
If the council moved to place that increased state revenues just in the general fund, it helps us with Moody's. It doesn't bind the future council to anything. They can just, once they have all the numbers for Board of Ed, they can then decide what to do at that point. I think that's, to me, the best way to handle it.
I understand what you're saying, but it also gives the incoming council the ability to spend it any way they want, and have the bond, have that minimum go down again. Whereas if you put even if it's a couple of percentages higher, it at least holds them accountable to the higher number. Whereas if we just put it in there, then and there's no minimum to have to keep in there, they can spend it any way they want, and so without affecting the number. If we change the policy for it to be 11%, now they're there's a policy they have to stick to. If we say, okay, we're going to put the 6 million, whatever the money is, into the account, and our MVR, our percentage goes up because we put it in, let's say it goes to 12%, but a month after they're done, it starts getting spent, whatever it may be. They give the Board of Ed their money, they figure out there's some other things to be spent. Now it goes back down and there's no governor to oversee that. And so it just seems to me that we should put some kind of minimum. If you're not comfortable with 11%, there should be something that holds the incoming council accountable to spending the taxpayers' money where they were overtaxed and we were taken to task for it, and just to put something there in place. You're right, they can spend it any way they want to, but Dean?
Yeah, I don't want to think in terms of personnel. I see the council as the council. We could be replaced by Disney characters. It doesn't make any difference. The council's the council. It's like any other body. What my interest is this: when the town goes into that meeting in December, I don't know when, what do we need to arm ourselves with? That's all I'm really interested in.
Now I'm picturing which Disney character, but
I'm usually Donald Duck.
The original Angry Bird. I'm going there next month. But I think the important thing is that the key is putting it in the commitment to putting it in the general fund, first of all. In terms of the policy for how much fund balance there has to be, it's a policy. I totally appreciate what you're saying, but it can be changed backwards too.
Sure.
It's not binding.
Yep.
Yeah, but it changed backwards is a bad signal to the bonding agency, isn't it?
Great.
I mean, the fact is, you've explained to us that our credit rating and bonding is an issue, right? That's a fact. That's in jeopardy. I mean, that's why you came to talk to us tonight. So to do nothing, I think, is like ignoring the issue. So, I mean, I agree with the mayor here that we need to do something, at least just turn it over to these folks, because you said the meeting starts December 7th. They're not even in place. So I think for us to do nothing is like ignoring that you just told us we had a grave issue with potential credit rating downgrade.
Nikki, did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. Cindy?
I just wanted to add, in the press release that Moody's put out when they put us into that group for the potential downgrade, one of the questions was what would cause it to go down? And a couple of things that they had identified was failure to sustainably balance financial operations in an evolving state support environment, and decline in financial reserves, tax base contraction. So those are the things that they'll be looking at to see how we can work our way through those. And I will also say that even, I know of 3 towns in Connecticut that have had downgrades from Moody's after their review.
Harry?
So maybe Cindy, you could give me a feel for what that means. I don't know, I don't understand all these numbers, big A, little a, and all that. So just let me finish. I mean, that's what we're talking about here to Z or whatever it could be, you know what I mean? I don't know, but say it was like to jump down a tad. Let's say big A to big A, little a, if that's, I'm making it up.
You end up with blue eyes.
Anyways, I mean, that was to happen. We jumped down a little bit because we're more of a risk to lend money to. So now we're talking about borrowing whatever we're gonna borrow for these schools. We have other stuff out there, bonding for roads and everything else. That affects our interest for a 20-year bond or whatever it is. So what does that mean? Just take a number. Let's say $1 million. Just take $1 million, a nice round number. If we had to borrow $1 million, and the interest rate was 3%, I have no idea what it is. If we were to go from big A to big A, little a, what is that going to cost us? I mean, could you just give us some kind of, what kind of impact is it going to have? Is it a trivial little number, or is it going to cost us millions of dollars over 20 years?
I don't think I can really give you that because it's all what.
Because that's what we're really talking about.
Right, and that's what it is. And I understand that. But when you're out there in the market, anytime you have a downgrade, I mean, look at the state of Connecticut. How many times in the last 2 years have they been downgraded. I mean,
Yep.
it's very significant. But until you go to market, it's hard to identify what the impact to you is going to be. Because we have the 3 ratings from the 3 different agencies.
Bonnie, and then Greg, and then Rich.
I'd like to make a motion that we put $3.8 million into the general fund and increase the limit, the minimum fund reserve to 10%.
We have a second?
Can I just clarify, by increasing the fund balance, you're practically not changing the policy?
I think changing the
No,
policy.
changing the policy
To 10%?
to 10% and putting 3.8 into the general fund.
It's all going into the general fund.
I'd like to-
So you're changing the
You
policy.
don't need to add the 3.8, I don't think.
Make it 11 and I'll say.
I'd like to amend that.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I agree
We
with
haven't have a second. Yeah, we don't have a second, Rich. So Rich, you can state
You can make a new.
I'll second, then I'll make a,
No, you make your own motion.
okay. I'll make a motion that we give the 3.8 million to the reserves, and that we put a cap on the, or not a cap, but we put a condition that the percentage doesn't change from, or go down from 7.75. It either stays the same or goes up. In other words, the new council cannot decrease the number. We keep it at 7.75, or we increase it, whatever they decide.
Is there a second? Greg?
I'd like to make a motion to change the language in the policy from 7.75% to 11%. Based upon the numbers that we talked about, at 11%, we need 13 million, which is $3.8 million from where we're at now. And if you subtract that from the 4.7 million, or 5.7 million, excuse me, with the...
4.7.
It's 5.7 with the pilot. That gives us an extra 1.9 million to play with, to get back to the schools, or what be. So my motion is to change the language.
I'll second that, I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. It is to put 3.8 million, make sure that 3.8 million goes into the general fund, and the policy is changed to amount equal to at least 11% of annual general fund expenditures. Is that correct?
I don't think you have to add the 3.8 million.
Okay. So 11%.
Yeah.
Any discussion on that?
So back to where we were before.
It was your recommendation, Dean.
Exactly.
I'm going to say.
Eric?
So that leaves, with the windfall $1 million or whatever, that leaves $1.9 million, for lack of a better term, to play with for the next council.
Yes.
And,
It allows them some flexibility there.
well, it does allow them some flexibility. I'm more worried about the education side of it, whether we have to meet MBR or not. Is that the right number for that?
Dr. Grenier was thinking, well, I'm meeting with him tomorrow, but he told me last week he was thinking, now we have to see what the state says, but he was thinking 1.5. I don't think, if you look at one budget to the next, I think the max would be 1.6. But I think he said he was going to go to the Board of Ed about 1.5. So
You know, I'm not going to vote for this because I think it's too much of a leap. I think if we were to jump to 10 or something like that.
Can we table
right?
this until the 28th?
Well, I mean, you can make a motion to, but
Yeah, I'd like
we
to
have a
make
motion and a second. I prefer we
I'd
vote on
like to make a
it.
motion that we table this until the 28th, allowing the town manager and Cindy to get more information.
And there's no guarantee we'll have it by then, but we could certainly try.
Is there a second?
I'll second that for discussion. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just second it for discussion. No, for other people to discuss.
Okay.
People want to talk about it, I'm sure.
Any discussion on this?
It just seems like we're confused.
Okay.
It seems like we're throwing numbers out, and it's a very important
Bonnie?
decision.
I'm not confused. I'd like to vote on it.
All right, hold on. We have a motion and a second to table it till the 28th. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstention?
Yeah, I'm opposed.
All right, so that fails.
You're opposed, you get him.
The table, I'm opposed
Yeah.
to table.
Yeah, so, okay, so that fails. So, go ahead.
Before you take a vote on the motion that's on the floor, I respectfully request a 5-minute recess to confer with the town manager. I know that's highly unusual, but
That's fine.
I could take a
We'll take a
break.
5-minute recess.
is that okay? Thank you.
Second rescinded, so that we can do this properly.
All right, I'll rescind the motion.
I'll rescind the second.
Okay. Dean?
All right, I move that we add a proposal to increase the unassigned fund balance to the agenda.
I think, and check me if I'm wrong, but I think we want to vote,
No, we don't have to suspend it because it's a Cal meeting.
we want to put on the agenda the debt policy and management fiscal practices is what you want to do for discussion.
Oh, very well, then I withdraw that. Then what I do is I move to add to the, since it wasn't seconded, I move to add to our agenda tonight, discussion on the town's debt policy and management / fiscal practices.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Oh,
Aye.
sorry.
So you're not moving to suspend the rules, you're moving to add that under consideration of referrals, as listed on our,
Well, I'm adding it as new business.
Yeah, because it's a cow, not a...
Right, but you're doing it with the authority being consideration of committee referral items as per the town council referral list, is that right? Otherwise, you'd have to suspend the rules.
Do you want to count? Do you want to count?
Now we just add it to the agenda.
You can add it to the agenda because of 7 on this agenda, is what I'm saying. That's what
So you're saying add it to 7 and it will add it to the
Yeah,
agenda?
yeah.
Well, as long
Because
as it's
7
added-
is there, you can add an existing referral.
Honestly, as long as it's added to the agenda. I don't care where it goes. It could go to roll call for all I care.
All right.
So we had a vote. When we do it one more time, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 9 to 0 to 0. Now we're discussing the policy, and Greg, if you wanted to put forth your
Motion
proposed...
for third time. Third
Yeah.
time's a charm.
Third time's a charm.
I'd like to make a motion to change the town's policy to maintain an unassigned general fund reserve in the amount of equal to or at least 11% of the annual general fund expenditures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Open for discussion? Discuss this out. Rich?
Again, I think we should leave everything the way it is until we know what the state is going to do with the school funding, the MBR. Yes.
Bonnie and then John?
I would like to maybe have Greg amend it to 10%, which should give us more than ample funding for the Board of Ed, if it deems to be more than 1.6 that the superintendent's asked for.
So are you making a motion to amend it?
No, I'll make a motion to amend it to 10%.
Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay. Any discussion? Harry?
What are the numbers of 10%? What does that mean? I see Cindy over there writing real quick.
Well,
Because,
it's right in between,
3.8 is going to be something
About
less than
12
3.
million.
11.8.
it should be 11.5. 9% is 10 million, 11% is 13 million.
I'm more interested in what part of this
11,889.
almost $6 million is being tied up.
10% of 118,897,132.
How much of this? that they have to take out of 6 million.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, if 9% is 10 million and 11% is 13 million, should be right in the middle.
I'm trusting the finance director on this one. Harry, you have anything else you want to say?
I just wanted to know what the
Okay.
3.8 just became.
2.6.
And John, did you want to say something?
Six.
I just want to point out that if we were to just put the money into the general fund, we get the full impact of putting that full amount in the general fund going into the Moody's meeting while still having the ability to do whatever we need to do for the schools. So my recommendation stands as earlier, that it goes into the fund balance.
But aren't we essentially doing that, but just saying that it needs to stay?
Well, now you've limited it more to 3 point, well, I mean, yeah, as default, but if you had a more proactive motion to put the full amount in there, that's preferable. 'Cause, you know, the more we can say we're putting in there going into December 7th, the better.
But I mean, full amount's going to end up in there to start, no matter what, and then we're just saying it can't go below 11.
It's just not, yeah, just not as it's a more passive thing by not expressly saying the rest of it will go, you know.
Okay, great.
I'll amend
No,
my...
wait a minute.
I mean, we can have a separate motion to say, put the full amount in, aside from the policy change amendment.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second to amend it to 10%. Can we vote on this? Any more discussion on that? All those in favor of amending the motion to 10%, raise your hand. Opposed? That fails. 8 to 1. 1 to 8. So now you want to amend your motion, Greg?
No, I think I'd like to just vote on my motion and then have another motion to put the full amount
Okay.
into the fund.
Okay.
Not to make this more difficult.
Just for discussion purposes, the meeting on the 28th is a town council meeting, correct?
Yes, it's going to be a special town council meeting
Special
Only?
town council meeting, so.
to wrap up the items from tonight.
I'm asking for clarification because I want to know, once we take this vote, this is committee of the whole. We can do anything we want on the 28th. We just have to make a decision what we want to do tonight. We can always change our mind on the 28th. Just always remember that, because that is our last day to actually make the decision. And even that night, we can still amend it if we really want to. But just kind of keep that in mind. We still have one more day to vote on this.
So right now we have a-
outside of
Good
what we
point.
decide tonight.
We have a motion and a second for 11%. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? That passes 7 to 2. And Greg, do you want to say something else?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to put, what is the number, Cindy? Is it
5.7?
5.7 million
Which
dollars
number?
into the fund balance?
Oh, the full amount. John has the number.
5,762,000, roughly.
$5,762,000 into the fund balance.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to put $5,762,000 into the fund balance. Any discussion? And Greg, your purpose for doing that is to direct the money into the fund balance to begin with?
Correct, to make a more positive statement for our Moody review.
Okay.
And then we could take the money out at a later date.
Yes.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of putting $5,762,000 into the fund balance? General fund?
I'm confused. What did I just miss? Why do we have a specific amount? It's all going into the general fund, correct? Why do we have to put an amount on it?
It's just nice going to Moody's to say we actually have a positive motion that we're putting it into the
So
general
that there's
fund.
record that we're
It
directing.
can always be taken back out later.
Why can't we put it all in there?
That
is all happening anyway.
That is
That's,
all.
that's
Putting
full
it in
amount.
writing.
It's a positive statement by...
I got you.
by saying
I'm
we're gonna
sorry.
spend
I
it.
was
Yeah.
That is the whole shebang.
All right.
confused for a second.
Any other discussion?
Sorry.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 9 to 0 to 0. Other business? Anybody have any other business? I'd just like to say I am, hopefully we'll be back by the 28th, having my knee replaced. So hopefully I'll get back in here for the last meeting tomorrow
Because it's that.
at L&M. So,
Oh, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck. You got, Scott?
Already having taken
I will
out
make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Don't forget.